Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Rem and Sam podcast. Another Tuesday night edition, the last caveman edition of the Rem and Sam podcast. Make no mistake, we're going to the barbershop tomorrow, but nothing stands in the way of the podcast. We had to get this one out, and we were going to wait a little bit to try to record during the Aces Storm game. That's about to happen again. We're recording this Tuesday night, but we just couldn't wait. We're getting blue balls for the podcast, boss. It is what it is. Pod, blue pod. Well, I don't know what it's called, but we couldn't we had to start up and just record. We couldn't wait any longer, and we're struggling through the fourth quarter of this Liberty Mystics game. Not because it's the WNBA, but because it's a blowout. The Liberty are up 78-62. Jonquel Jones, is she gonna have to show the birth certificate? She's dominating right now, and it looks like, of course, the Liberty are on their way. Are they the one seed right now in the WNBA? Let's pull up the WNBA standings. Should we start this off with a little WNBA corner? I feel like it's only appropriate Tuesdays for the WNBA, so might as well get a little update. I know the playoffs are approaching. The Caitlin Clark people are very, very excited, as it does seem like the Fever are pretty comfortably gonna make it in. And the Liberty right now, yes, still the number one seed, 31-7 going into tonight's game against the Mystic. So they're going to be 32-7. The Mystics are 13-25. There's a three-way tie at 13-25 between the Mystic, the Dream, and the Sky. And I think, yeah, they showed a graphic about that a little bit earlier in the game. And I think they're battling that out for the last seed in the playoffs. So I don't know. Do the Liberty want to drop this one? Maybe they want to see the Mystic in the playoffs. It looks like they definitely have the upper hand. Up 20 right now. Again, Jonquel Jones just running. Is Breanna Stewart? We were locked into the second half. I'm not sure if Breanna Stewart is playing in tonight's game. But again, you got Jonquel Jones and Sabrina Ionescu, all the talent on the Liberty. They're going to be fine in this one, clearly. But speaking of the Fever in the playoffs, 20-19 on the season. They're the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 seed going into the playoffs. So right now their matchup would be the Connecticut Sun. If they play the 3 seed as the 6 seed. So the Connecticut Sun, obviously they opened up the season against them a couple of times, and it was tough. The defense, they were, going into the season projected to have one of the better defenses in the league. And I think still, yeah, they're number one right now in points per game, opposing points per game, number one in a good way, the Connecticut Sun. So that could be a potential bad matchup. I know the WNBA is very top heavy. So do we have to pause that? I don't know. But the good teams are definitely stacked up, and it'd be hard for the Fever or the Mercury for somebody to slip through in the first round and get a first round upset. But the Aces Storm battling it out tonight. The Aces are the 4 seed still at 25-13. The Storm are sorry, I don't know if I said that right. But the Aces are the 4 seed at 25-13. And the Storm are the 5 seed at 24-14. So this is a matchup for playoff seeding. I mean, this could determine home court potentially for the Aces if they lose this game. There's probably a couple games left in the season. We'll pull up the rest of the schedule here and see how many games they have left. But that's also a potential playoff preview as well. And the Storm were another team that was super hyped up going into the year. And I still think a team that has title aspirations. I don't know. We need to get a WNBA expert in here to tell us if that's actually accurate. Can we get Allie on the phones? IT, call her up. But there is... Oh, so the Fever only have one game left, and that is Thursday night. So let's check the Aces here real quick. If that game, so they probably have 2 games left, including this one. So by the time you guys are listening to this, they're going to have 1 game remaining, I'm guessing. Yeah, so they played the Storm tonight, and then the Wings, they also play on Thursday as well, too. So, shout out to Enrique Gumbwale, but you could definitely see the Aces taking that one. And the Storm, let's see who their last game is against. If the Aces wouldn't have home court against the Liberty or any of the other top teams as the 4 seed anyways, but in a potential matchup with the Storm, that could be a big deal. I mean, it's definitely going to be a lot harder for the other team. It's definitely going to be, yeah, like a lot more, I think, easier for the Aces to go play at home. But the Storm have the Mercury left as well, too. So that's a much tougher game. The Aces maybe could definitely, flip that spot back. Oh, no, the Mercury, sorry. I was thinking of Minnesota. Mercury is Phoenix. We're still learning, people. Mercury is 18-20. They're the 7th seed, a playoff team, but I'm assuming the Storm are going to be favored in that one. But a potential playoff matchup here tonight, Aces versus Storm. And let's pull up Caitlin Clark's recent numbers here. WNBA Corner 2.0, because, we've been seeing the box scores. She's been going crazy. Nobody at work right now cares about the NFL. Everybody just is talking about Iowa, winning some games and Caitlin Clark, of course. But maybe that's just because everybody's fantasy teams are struggling right now. But in the last, the points, just looking at the points in the box score, we can go back a while here. And there is the Olympic break in the mix. Should we just go from the Olympic break till now? Since then, so that's a 13-game period, 24 points a game and 8.9 assists. So on the season, she's 8.4. So she's up a little bit there. And I'm assuming that would still be number 1 in the league over that stretch. But 24 points a game? A'ja Wilson is killing everybody in that category. She's at 20. I don't want to just assume, throw out a number that's too high, but I think she's in the upper 20s. Yeah, 27. Why doubt A'ja Wilson? 27-12. For her career, she's 21 points a game. I think that was the number I had stuck in my head. But 24 a game over that stretch. I know we could do the filter on WNBA.com, but we're not on the stream right now. If we were, that'd probably be a good thing to go research. But she's got to be at least top 10, maybe top 5 in scoring over that stretch. And 43%, I think, is not bad as well, too. So it would have been interesting to see what the season would have looked like if they hadn't had that Olympic break. Because that is that's definitely a good thing to have happen in, and it's the same advantage for everybody. Everybody had the break, obviously, but just looking at all the rookies, like if the NFL guys could just go away for 3 weeks, and there is, you get like a rest versus rust thing, but I guess that is more like a playoffs and you come back and play 1 game versus, returning and playing the rest of the season. But, the getting the healthy, the being in the film room, the really getting to evaluate, it's definitely a big advantage. And 36% as well, too, from the 3-point range, grandpa terms. But even that could go up a little bit. I know if she was, and, her shot selection is going to be a little harder. And with the team, there's going to be the bailout shots at the end of the shot clock. We get that there's going to be things that maybe it's going to be a little harder for her to get to a number like 40% early on in her career. But I wouldn't be shocked if definitely if she hit that for multiple seasons at some point. So that could definitely go up. And the turnovers obviously could go down as well, too. She's almost 6 turnovers a game in that stretch, but she's a rookie. She's trying to figure it out. And 24-8, the season's almost over. Is there any chance that Caitlin Clark could be on the all WNBA teams? I don't know what the history is for rookies making that selection, but I know the WNBA people are always talking about that it's harder just in general to make the teams than it is in the NBA. So I'm assuming a limited awards bracket, only 2 all WNBA teams. They probably say it's harder to make that team as well, too. But we can do a couple of quick stack checks. And, she didn't make the Olympic team. So if you're just looking at the guards on the Olympic team and just saying that, and, they're all having great seasons as well, too. But, just that pool of names would be in the mix for the all WNBA team over herself before she was in consideration. Then it's like, yeah, then, that would make sense. I'm looking at the NBA stats. I need the WNBA stats. I'm doing it out of habit, people. But, and it's a full season award, too. So there was definitely, she's playing well now too. So you can kind of go, ha, ha, remember when she wasn't playing well at the beginning of the season. But yeah, I mean, if we're talking about all WNBA, like she definitely had some adjusting to do when she first got into the league, but she's already leading the whole league in assists, and that is on the season as well too. So, I mean, if we're just doing an NBA comparison, I mean, that was Halliburton this year. That's it, the Indiana teammate essentially over there and for the Pacers, but he led the league in assists, and they were also a playoff team as well. Now the Fever are comfortably a playoff team. I mean, she definitely has a case. So right now for PER, she's down the list a little bit. One, two. We're gonna count people. Sorry, IT. Fast forward this part. She's number 20 right now, so just sneaking in the top 20, and that's filtering out. That didn't filter out a couple of people as well too that are maybe limited on minutes. I don't want to assume if it's just injury or how it is with the NBA too. You get a couple of garbage time guys, put up some stats, and you get them sorted into the advanced stats numbers. But she's near top 15 for PER. I guess she would again need to be top 10 for the WNBA. Get in the WNBA, people. The WNBA brain. But she's on the edge. And the defensive stuff is pause on the edge, but the defensive stuff is gonna bring the advanced numbers down a little bit too. She's not negative on the defensive win shares anymore. That was like it was maybe a little bit negative earlier on the year, but not negative. It's definitely a plus. But for offensive win shares, let's see. She's still kind of in the same spot as well too for that. Same in some of the other advanced numbers. So yeah, maybe it's a little rich to say all WNBA at this point. IT will crunch the numbers. Maybe we'll dig into it and do we do we do all WNBA teams next week? I don't know if we'll give our full predictions because we want to respect the people that watch the WNBA for the entire season. When we're only sitting here watching Angel Reese and Kelsey Plum, and maybe our votes will be a little bit skewed, but I feel like you'd have to at least write Caitlin Clark's names down as in the mix at this point, which again, with the way the season started, and there's a very great chance where she has, a promising rookie season and she's not in the top of the league in any of these stats or, any way in anything like that. But again, still shows promise. And it's like, no, she's all, I mean, I feel like, again, we don't have the knowledge of the entire WNBA of some people, but is it a hot take, WNBA people? Is it a hot take to say she's already the best playmaker in the, it probably is because she leads the league in turnovers. So like right away, maybe they'd throw that stat back at us. But again, the vision stuff that she has and the way she's able to manipulate the pick and roll as well too is definitely stuff that, I mean, we would place stock in her as being the best playmaker in the WNBA at some point. But the fact that she's in that tier already as a rookie, it's like, yeah, this is perfect. Exactly what you want to see from somebody that was labeled a generational talent. And, if we want to talk a little bit about what happened in the NFL this weekend, Sunday Night Football, Caleb Williams versus CJ Stroud. And Caleb Williams is in game 2. And maybe it's not going necessarily great. I was looking at some of the advanced numbers for the quarterbacks earlier today, and it was like, the adjusted, one of those adjusted yards per attempt adjusted net yard per attempt or whatever. But RIP Bryce Young, he was the bottom quarterback in the league, pause on that stat. But the second worst quarterback was Caleb Williams, and it was like less than 2 adjusted net yards per attempt. Whatever the metric was. The fact that it was under 2 yards, it was like, okay, I get, there is going to be, an adjusting period for, growing pains for anybody in any league adjusting to any kind of level up that you're granted that kind of period. But, do you want to be bottom 2 in the league in some of the advanced stats? It's for the number 1 overall pick. It's maybe a little bit of a bummer for Bears fans right away. And especially maybe it's the fault of everybody around too, looking at the roster and kind of hyping it up, going that this is a sleeper playoff team. And I don't even think that is still crazy from like watching the games that they played the last couple of the couple of opening games that they played, because I mean, that first win, it was like, yeah, that is the formula for what we thought this team was going to be, just, on a much sloppier, lower level with Caleb Williams not throwing for 100 yards. But it was like, can Caleb Williams run this offense enough where maybe some of the quarterback stuff that he could bring to the table is a little bit of a step up from Justin Fields. And if he can run the offense a little more, the defense gets better. He can hold down the fort enough to, maybe he only needs to score in the 18 to 22 point range week to week. And, again, they held the Texans to like 16 points. So yeah, if they had 18 points in this game, they would have won the game. Yeah. Unfortunately, Caleb Williams was not able to hit the 18 to 22 point bar yet. But we see the formula through these two games of why people were hyping this Bears team up for this year specifically. And I think long term, it's still the defense anyways, still very encouraging. The offensive line is, I think Caleb Williams is second right now in pressure rate. Daniel Jones might be first. Anything Giants and Daniel Jones related is going to be forgettable. It's going to go in one year and right out the other. It's just what it's going to be this year for the Giants. They're well on their way to picking, I guess, is it going to be Quinn Ewers number 1 overall this year? I don't know how that's going to end up playing out, but that's what it's looking like. Can Arch Manning reclassify in the NFL draft? Are they going to make that rule change in time? I mean, with the way that, just playing in one game and then some of the sideline stuff, the celebrations, the swagger that we're seeing from Arch Manning. And make no mistake, Quinn Ewers has swagger as well too. So maybe Arch Manning has learned it from somewhere. But if there was ever a player that the league could make an exception for, they're like, oh, wait a second. We didn't actually realize. Have we been saying Arch Manning was born in this year? 97? It was 90, 96 or whatever the year is. But I guess the Giants are going to take Quinn Ewers number 1 overall. So we're just going to get back to the Giants when April rolls around. But Caleb Williams second in sack percentage this year. And again, the offensive line is struggling too, but I think Caleb Williams is not totally blameless in that game. Collinsworth, one of the 2 or 3 things that he actually pointed out on the broadcast, one of the things was comparing Caleb Williams but time holding the football. See, that's the thing. I guess we can just say football instead of saying ball, but they were his, time to pass. And it was funny. They were talking about like how much progress he's made in bringing that down in just week 1 to week 2. And they were like, in week 1, he's over 2.5 seconds. And then the 2 or 3 clips that they show, he's at like 2.47, 2.46, and then 2.7, which, make no mistake. The NFL is definitely, Mike, we get it. It's a game of inches, micro penises. It's a game of whatever, but it's, all these small margins. We get it. But I think you can bring it down a little bit more than 2.46. And, Caleb Williams is a play extender type of quarterback. But as he figures out that role, that's going to make the offensive line look a little bit better as well, too. Because, the offensive line did have moments last year. So, like, Darnell Wright is a guy that I would still really like. Tevin Jenkins has always been at least an above average. Not just to like disrespect, Tevin Jenkins, very solid lineman, and definitely I think it's going to be able to hold up for years to come. But as Caleb Williams figures out some of the defensive stuff, which is, I think, maybe some of the IQ stuff, and we throw IQ around like I'm not saying that in a bad way, but just some of the actual like nuances of being a quarterback. I think maybe we were thinking he was a little bit further along than he really was. And if you listen to him in the offseason as well, too, talking about what he needed to get better at, he was very open about like, hey, there's blitz stuff here that I need to work on, and there's stuff with the safeties here that I'm still not quite seeing properly. So again, like as he works that stuff out, he's going to continue to grow as a player, obviously. But again, with connecting it back to what we saw with Caitlin Clark this year, like, it's not fun to say with the rookies because we're in the moment and it's week to week, and the week to week is all we have to talk about. But ultimately he's going to need some time. And again, Caitlin Clark has ascended to the level where she's leading the league in assists. She's 25 points a game the last 13 games going back to the Olympic break. And even the first, going back and looking at the couple of games leading into that, she was still up over 20 points a game. I'm sure if we included those games in the average, it wouldn't necessarily bring her numbers down in a way that doesn't look as impressive. 90% from the free throw line. I mean, make no mistake, people. The pieces are there, but let's pull up the Bears schedule here and see if that's gonna potentially, just get shut down. This whole theory if they just play some tougher defenses, but they've got Indy in week 3, and we'll talk about this in a little bit. On the Friday stream with Sam, but this is a very intense game between Caleb Williams and Anthony Richardson very on, just in terms of, a couple of young guys I feel like kind of need a momentum win. But the Rams in week 4, we'll see what that looks like when we get there, because I still don't want to give up on Stafford and McVay, and I probably won't for the rest of the year. But I guess, Cup's down, Puka Nacua, we jinxed him with the fantasy pick. Unfortunately, he just goes on IR in, like 2 quarters of football. The defense is decimated, and they were getting pushed around in the run blocking by Arizona as well, too. It's some young linemen there for the defensive line. So maybe that game is not as tough in week 4 versus LA, but Carolina in week 5, that I guess that's going to be the get right game for you. Is that going to be the pause the coming out party for Caleb Williams? Yeah, on the field, who knows? But maybe that's the first game where we really get could we see what Caleb Williams could bring to the table as an NFL quarterback. Jacksonville in week 6, a bye in week 7, the Commanders in week 8. And that's going to be another really good young quarterback matchup as well, too, because, part of this Caleb Williams thing is going to be watching what happens with Jaden Daniels this season, because, I mean, make no mistake, I'm a little surprised that I might say this, but it does seem like the Commanders offenses put Daniels in a little bit more of a position to succeed than Caleb Williams. And going into the season, if it's like, the Commanders offense is going to be better than the Bears offense this year, that's not surprising, but I think that was more, maybe not necessarily better, but like put up more stats. I don't think that would be surprising. But again, I think from some of the win total and maybe what the offense's impact on the game is, like, it was like, the Bears, the Bears team was going to be, potentially more successful than the Commanders this year, but they've been really safe with the passing selection that Jaden Daniels is using. And part of that is a little frustrating because, like the preseason, that first pass that Jaden Daniels goes out and throws is that beautiful shot down the sideline, like drops it right in the bucket. It's perfect. It's like, oh, the LSU thing, it's back. It's, this is exactly what you want from the vertical threat that you were seeing at LSU. But, again, there's going to be that adjusting. You don't want him to, his confidence to be shaken. And I think it's been really good for the first 2 weeks. And, again, you get the Giants in week 2. It's just a absolute gift. Definitely a little bit easier than the Titans are. They're not going to win a lot of games, but they do seem like they're going to be a feistier team. And Will Levis, I don't know I was trying to think of an NBA comp for Will Levis, because I was listening to Ryan Clark and ESPN I think he was comparing Lamar Jackson to Russell Westbrook, which maybe peak Russell Westbrook. I didn't totally like that comp because, like Russell Westbrook did win an MVP, but did he even win? Have they won a playoff series with Westbrook as the main guy? I don't even know, but I feel like the Ravens have at least been slightly more competitive in the playoffs. But I was like, is Will Levis late stage Westbrook? I don't know, but the chaoticness of Levis is way up there. I don't want to say unmatched by anybody I've ever seen. Again, this is cross sports. Just, I don't want to say it unmatched, but it is, if we're doing a draft of the most chaotic athletes that we've ever seen, like his name is definitely getting brought up. And, you get the off-field antics with the mayo in the coffee. Like it all makes sense. And maybe mayo in the coffee just makes you throw, the coffee and with the caffeine and then the craziness of the mayo. Maybe that just makes you throw weird passes. Who knows? But they're at least going to be a feisty opponent. So, Titans and Texans in the first 2 weeks is a lot tougher than who the Commanders have in week 1. But the NFL season just goes by too quickly. But definitely the Giants is, a gift to play in week 2. But it's also going to be a weird thing to watch that comparison, because that 1-2 matchup is a little bit different because of the age than some other 1-2 matchups that we've seen. Like you think the Luck Griffin matchup, like Luck was in school all 4 years. And, Williams was a younger freshman as well, too. Did he reclassify? I think he might have actually reclassified in high school, reclassified, however you want to say it. But I think he moved up a class. So he's just a younger quarterback in general. But you get Daniels, the 5th-year senior. I just searched Caleb Daniels. I had both of them in mind, but Caleb Williams. I want to say he's under 21. Oh no, he is 22. He's almost 23. Born in 2001. Okay, yeah, he's right on par with the other guys. But anyways, Caleb Williams is right on par with other guys being drafted out of the 3-year cycle. But you get Jaden Daniels staying in college the extra year, and I don't know if it's being in like a college system that necessarily is just the super beneficial thing. But with any QB, and we're really seeing this bear out time and time again. But the reps thing is gonna be the big it's just the thing that seems to win out time and time again. And again, it's not Jaden Daniels staying at LSU that was super. And you get Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas. Like, yeah, it's an NFL team, almost on offense. But the confidence I think that Daniels was able to gain, and again, Williams has that confidence at USC, winning the Heisman, and getting the generational talent. The magazine covers, like, we're definitely hyping him up. But Daniels wasn't in that place at Arizona State, wasn't in that place when he first got to LSU. And again, it's not just if he goes into the draft as a non-Heisman winner, but if he goes into the draft as a guy that I just think seeing success is very important. No matter, again, not no matter what level you're at, but at these, D1 college, we're talking about, still some of the highest levels of football here. Like having success at these high levels is super important. And Caleb Williams had success too, but Jane Daniels was definitely able to find that success at LSU. And we're seeing him translated over into the Commanders, and that couple extra years of just doing it. pause is, I wonder if that is going to be just a thing that bears out in the beginning, or if we're actually seeing, hey, is Daniels the number one guy? Because as we got closer to the draft, I mean, that wasn't as crazy a take as you would have thought of, even going into the college football season, you're like, what are you talking about? But, once we got there, even if you were a Caleb Williams truther, I feel like, a reasonable draft person that had Caleb, myself included, like you have Caleb Williams number one, but Jaden Daniels is like, yeah, okay, Caleb Williams can create and run around, like so can Jaden Daniels. Caleb Williams has a big arm, well, so is Jaden Daniels. Like Jaden Daniels was really good from the pocket at LSU, and how is Caleb Williams in the pocket at USC? We definitely saw him, make strides in that under Lincoln Riley. But it was, outside of the build of Jaden Daniels, outside of the height, the weight part of it, it's like he's kind of got a lot of overlapping attributes to Caleb Williams. So I feel like they're, a lot closer than the one guy being, John Elway. And, Dan Marino goes 20 picks later. And again, Jaden Daniels I feel like Marino was picked in the 20s. But do we remember the 30 for Doc correctly? We didn't take notes, but we were definitely locked in. It was very entertaining, of course, as 30 for 30s are. And is there a 30 for 30, a new one tonight? I'm not sure what it's on. Make no mistake, 30 for 30. Once they did a 30 for 30 on Dude Perfect, it was like, it's just, RIP 30 for 30. But again, this WNBA game is a blowout. And I feel like there's like just an hour break between this game and the Aces game. So, I mean, it's nice that it gives us time to, wrap up us and go watch the full game. But unfortunately, not able to overlap with the stream. And we had to bot. We couldn't hold it off anymore. But yeah, I like we're saying, obviously I don't think anybody is like in full panic mode with Caleb Williams, because the offensive line is not it, like Anthony Richardson for the Colts. Like, I know he struggled against the Packers this week, but even on that last drive and through the first couple of games, like the offensive line has been really good this year, and his ability to develop as a quarterback is going to be very much helped by the fact that he's going to have a clean pocket. He's going to have some good time to operate, and Caleb Williams might not necessarily have that same luxury, but again, I don't think anybody is in full panic mode. I just think that like maybe I don't know if we just want to move on to the next thing, but like with Bryce Young, you kind of saw right away that yes, there's struggles, but the struggles, as a non-football guy, it's hard to say like these struggles can't be worked on, but it just seemed like the size thing was really a factor right away. And I guess that is going to be the first thing that everybody points to, but at the end of the day, I don't even know if that's the thing that kept Bryce, I kept, we're already talking about Bryce Young in the past tense, but, is keeping Bryce Young from having success on the field. But, like Caleb Williams, it seems like, okay, if we read the defenses, once things start slowing down, like I think we're really going to start to see what Caleb Williams is capable of. And yeah, it's not like he's going to, Andrew Luck light up the league right away. And maybe, do we want to, what's fair when grading guys on grades of generational talent's a tough thing, tough label to throw on anybody. Like, maybe you'd want your guy to enter the league right away, start lighting it up. I get that. MJ, I'm sure, his growing pains were a lot less than everybody. LeBron, I know his adjustment period as well too. Like, his rookie season, he wasn't an all-star, but I think looking back, that was definitely a snub, but his numbers were good. I mean, you could see right away that, he was producing and being a productive player. So, I think Collinsworth was definitely being a little too dramatic with like, oh, Caleb Williams is like the growth from week 1 to week 2. But, and, some of that is too, it's just like, was he so off in week 1 that he dials it back a little bit in week 2? And now it looks now just him being more normally off is like a good thing. But I do see what Collinsworth was seeing with some of the throws, some of the decisiveness. But again, these are all still things that are going to need to be worked on. It's week 2. And unfortunately, against Gus Bradley, he's, going to have a tough task this week against that defensive mastermind. But yeah, speaking of Bryce Young, RIP the GOAT, Bryce Young. And, I do mean the GOAT, and not necessarily in a bad way, because I feel like if you check, not even if I feel like if you check the tapes, like I was definitely pro Bryce Young in the draft, and I don't regret it either. Like I'm still haven't given up on Bryce Young. I still want to see Bryce Young have success in the NFL. Like I want to see him have a moment, but I was definitely not gonna criticize the Panthers for taking him number 1 overall. Trading and giving up all the assets and that stuff is one thing, but let's just say the Panthers had the number 1 overall pick and ended up taking Bryce Young. I wouldn't have criticized them for that because, yeah, the height thing was definitely obvious, and it does seem like just there's some things that unfortunately you can't overcome. Does size actually matter in the NFL? It might, but like I said, I kind of mean it when I said Bryce Young is the GOAT, because he is I'll say this for me anyways, for guys that I've seen, he's probably the best college football quarterback that I've ever seen. And I watched, vaguely remember some of those Tebow games as well too. And the Tebow thing as the college quarterback is weird because you get you go through and look at the Heisman stuff and, definitely the impact at Florida. It's like, the legacy of Tebow is hard to not have him in the mix as the best quarterback of all time. Again, we're just talking about for guys that I've seen, which it starts kind of in that 2007 range and on. But, you get like Vince Young is already in the NFL at this point. Carson Palmer's already in the NFL at this point. And again, college quarterbacks, like I know it doesn't always, correlate to NFL success, but it does correlate to the NFL draft. And you get the guys with the generational label like Andrew Luck, but RG3 as well too, electrifying Trevor Lawrence. Like we know who the the great college quarterbacks are Deshaun Watson, OG Deshaun Watson back in the day, but his run at Clemson. And Bryce Young didn't even win the national title. Like Lawrence won the title, Watson won the title. Tua, he won the title. I get, he didn't win the title as the quarterback for the full season, but was the quarterback in a title game and the quarterback of a, quarterback to team that ended up winning the title. I guess Hurts is not in the mix for probably GOAT college quarterback, but if we're looking at career, at least for recent guys, like Baker Mayfield as well too, didn't win the national title, but put up a lot of stats year to year. But just the couple of years that Bryce Young was carrying Alabama, because let's be honest, like, and Alabama is like stacked with talent. Like, I'm not saying Alabama was not a top 10 team or a top 5 team in the nation, but again, the Alabama standard is, under Saban anyways. Kalen DeBoer, shout out, he's holding up well so far to start off his Alabama run. And, the standard bears the same whether or not it's Kalen DeBoer or they have to move on. But, under Saban, it's like, if we're not one, it's not quite enough. But that so the 2021 season, that first full year as a starter, they lost 2 games. They lost that Texas A&M game, and then they lost to Georgia as well, too. And, again, I think the Alabama teams that he was on are maybe some of the more limited teams that Saban was working with, under the Saban standards. But for a quarterback to just time and time again have game-winning drives, like Bryce Young is just the most clutch. Maybe greatest college quarterback is a little bit of a stretch, but the clutch factor of Bryce Young, like the man just had more times that I can remember of putting his team on his back, and just in games like that Auburn game where it's just games where like, this is an ugly game. The offensive line is struggling. It doesn't seem like there's really anything going Alabama's way. And just the last drive, Bryce Young's going to pull something out. He's not, I don't know if they're going to remember him. Like, we're going to remember him running around the way we did. And I do feel like, unfortunately, maybe it's the modern YouTube thing as well too, but I do feel like some of the NFL impact does change how we view, or at least how much we go back to and revisit like a guy's college career. Because, Matt Leinert's another great example of a guy that, he's in the mix as well too. And maybe he is like actually the greatest college quarterback of all time, but I don't know if people are rushing to call Matt Leinart the greatest college quarterback of all time because of the NFL thing. And because it's like, well, if he is the greatest college quarterback of all time, then why is the NFL thing just so like drastically different from what we saw? And maybe, if it's like a Carson Palmer thing where, Carson Palmer is definitely like a successor. You get a guy like Kyler Murray, like, there's still a lot to be written for Kyler Murray's career, but I don't know if he's going to, be like a multi-time MVP. Maybe I'm speaking too soon. Maybe he's going to win the MVP this year with the way he's playing so far. But, I get, Kyler Murray could not make the Hall of Fame and still not be like a Heisman curse candidate. And that's another tough thing for Bryce Young in this mix as well too, is I don't want to say that the Heisman curse has been reversed, but the last handful of years, the Heisman curse has definitely not been as effective as it used to be. And I don't know if that's just a witchcraft thing in general. I don't know if witchcraftery is just down overall, but going back the last 10 or so years. So 2014, you got Marcus Mariota, not off to a hot start, but after that you go, okay, so we got Derrick Henry in 2015, great running back, Lamar Jackson, Baker Mayfield, which, make no mistake, I mean, we're talking about this in 2024. So the Baker Mayfield Heisman in here is, and what he's been able to, reclaim for his NFL career has definitely helped the point that we're trying to make here and talk about the Heisman curse being reversed, because it looked like it had a hold of Baker Mayfield there for a while, but he got his exorcism and he's back to being, Pro Bowl caliber quarterback for, we throw Pro Bowl around loosely these days, but Pro Bowl caliber quarterback. in the NFL, at least an above average starter. But Baker Mayfield in 2016, Kyler Murray in 2018. Again, Kyler Murray, I mean, terrific start to the season. And I think, obviously for what he had showed outside of the injured seasons, people weren't ready to give up on Kyler Murray. Like nobody was ready to write him off going into the year. And it definitely seems like he's paying off that stock, and definitely not, if he continues what he's doing this year, it's just like it's a couple of good seasons. It's too much promise. Like I feel like even, if he retired after the end of this year, obviously that's very abrupt and disappointing if you're a Cardinals fan, but I don't feel like you would necessarily say that the Heisman curse had affected Kyler Murray. Maybe you would if he retired early. You'd blame it on the Heisman curse. But Joe Burrow 2019, Devontae Smith in 2020, Caleb Williams in 2022, and then Jaden Daniels in 2023 is still, and Caleb Williams as well too, both rookies this year. Still a lot to be written there, but we left out Bryce Young in 2021. So again, just to go through those names, recently you've got Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson, Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Joe Burrow, Devontae Smith, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels. I mean, that's a very strong group of guys. And, maybe the Heisman curse has Caleb Williams. If it had to pick one between Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams, maybe it was like they're in the same draft class and we can only choose one. And maybe it got a hold of Caleb Williams. We'll have to see. But, again, we're not giving up. 2 games, it's too early. And it looks like Jaden Daniels is off to a promising start as well. So it's just a tough entry in the Heisman list there, in terms of what has been accomplished in the NFL career. But again, if you go back and look at the names before what we just read off, before Derrick Henry, this is now going backwards. So, 2014, 2013, 2012, etc. But you got Marcus Mariota, Jameis Winston, Johnny Manziel, Robert Griffin, Cam Newton, Mark Ingram, Sam Bradford, Tim Tebow, Troy Smith, Reggie Bush, Matt Leinart, Jason White, Carson Palmer, Eric Couch. I mean, there's a reason that the Heisman curse was a thing, because it wasn't even like, again, like Devontae Smith. Is Devontae Smith going to be a Hall of Fame receiver? Like, I don't know if he's on pace to be that, but definitely, I mean, Pro Bowler. If he made a second team All Pro, even like if he had like a first team All Pro 1,800 yard season, I don't think anybody would be like totally shocked that Devontae Smith just broke out and went up to the next level. But, it's like these guys were just totally out of the league at one point. Like Jason White, I guess Jason White was undrafted. So maybe that's like double the Heisman curse. I don't know if the Heisman curse is the guy wins the Heisman and gets drafted and he's jinxed in the NFL, or if he's, jinxed in the NFL the minute he wins the Heisman curse. But yeah, Jason, the curse was so strong on Jason White that unfortunately he just couldn't even get it in there. Pause. But like I said, I don't want to give up on Bryce Young yet. It's, it's not too early to pull the trigger. We're not saying that. Like a move had to be made, make no mistake, but it's too early to say that Bryce Young just can't ever have a moment in the NFL. And we keep adjusting the takedown, which, of course we feel bad to do, because we, like we said, we still are holding on to the Bryce Young stock. No, we're not just a castaway on Bryce Young Island, but the island itself, like the ocean is starting to take over the island. There's, less and less land every day. And we may just have to start constructing a boat. And pretty soon we're just going to be floating out in the middle of nowhere and looking for rescue. I don't know what's going to end up happening, but I think he could have a moment. And like I said, it's like, I think at one point we asked Sam in the offseason, like, do you think Bryce Young could make the Pro Bowl at some point in his career? It's like, could he be above average starter? Could he be, could he have a good season? But I think Bryce Young could have a moment. And, again, a number 1 overall pick, like, I don't know. They don't have like the Trubisky, and Trubisky was number 2. Like he's right in the mix there for number 1 overall. But like he's had the run as the backup quarterback, kind of stuck around in the league, and he may stick around for a while. Like Trubisky might be in the league for 12 years, just hanging out, collecting paychecks, and just having a good time. And like Leinart, how long was Leinart in the league for? Let's double check that, because I feel like Vince Young as well too. Like I feel like some of these guys just had shortened runs, and Vince Young. There might be reasons, but retired at 28, 6 years for Vince Young. I also didn't realize the 2 Pro Bowls for Vince Young as well. Yeah, offensive rookie of the year, definitely got off to a hot start. I mean, I would go back and redo the Vince Young career, draft him and try it again. I still have the stock, but again, you just don't. And he, number 3 overall pick, not a number 1 overall pick, but just the high level guy that doesn't quite work out. And make no mistake, it's like, it's not just that he doesn't work out. It's like, you really don't work out. It's not just he didn't want to be in the league. It's, maybe you can't. But I do think that Bryce, I'm calling it now. Clip this and put it in the vault and save it for when it happens. But there's going to be a game. He's going to be a backup at some point in the future. Well, he's already a backup, but on a different team, he's going to be sitting there waiting his turn. The starter is going to go down. He's going to get subbed in. They're going to be down 10 points, and he's going to lead a couple of drives, the comeback victory, and people are going to be like, maybe it was Carolina all along. Did he just need a new system? Did they handle it wrong? Did he need time? They shouldn't have thrown him in the fire too early. And we're going to have the whole discourse, and then, maybe he starts the next week and throws, 2 more picks, and we're right back on track for, oh yeah, this is why they had the starter in there in the first place. But like we said, we're adjusting the take. It's, got to continue to, unfortunately, to, be corrected. But I think Bryce Young will have an NFL moment. Bryce Young will win a game. The man has won some games. How did he win 2 or 1 game? Because he was out not a ton of games last year, but he did miss at least 1 game. I think maybe 2 as well. Oh yeah, so he was 2-14, 2-16 as a starter. But again, to defend Bryce Young for a second, like if we can call it defense, people have been saying like this man is the worst quarterback that we've ever seen. And again, we're talking about with what we've seen with our own eyes. Like for me and Sam, that time period is shorter than some other adults out there. But, we're not going, maybe some guy in the 60s or 50s is getting lost. But I was looking at other guys that had their, again, the high draft picks that didn't start that many games. I was looking at the under 25 starts for their careers for top 10 overall picks. And top 10 is kind of broad as well, too. Like the difference between a 10th and a number 1, like in terms of the discourse, is definitely a little bit different. But, just in terms of a top level guy, names in here like David Klinger, Heath Schuler, Tim Rosenbach, 1989 from Washington State with Tim Rosenbach and Ryan Leaf. And if we want to go back to 79, Jake Thompson as well. I don't know. I don't have what pick he was here written down, but 1979 draft, started 21 games. Washington State, be careful drafting those quarterbacks. I don't know if Gardner Minshew is turning that around, but yeah, we also said Ryan Leaf was in there, started 21 games in his career. Josh Rosen, 16 starts. Kelly Stauffer, 16 starts. Andre Ware, I did not realize that. I mean, you hear the list of the names of who were the, the unfortunate quarterbacks, who didn't it work out for, blah, blah, there are the stereotype guys that it didn't work. I mean, it means of just like the classic names that are thrown out there. I didn't mention Jamarcus Russell because, I guess he is at 25 starts. I should have mentioned him. Another, again, iconic name thrown in there. Ryan Leaf, another iconic one in the wrong way. Zach Wilson will go down in that list. 33 starts for Zach Wilson. Didn't make the cut for what we were talking about. But I didn't realize how bad it got for Andre Ware when he got drafted to the Lions. 6 starts for the Heisman Trophy winner. Again, I mean, make no mistake, the Heisman, I don't know what was going on. If there was just, we've really cleaned up Salem in the last couple of years. I don't know if there was some more activity that we didn't know about and they were secretly, personalities, Heisman candidates. But 6 starts for Andre Ware is crazy. And then 1982 draft, the Colts draft Art Schlitter. I don't know if I'm going to say this guy's name right, but SCHLICHTER. And, you got to be careful when we're talking about, the worst quarterback. When we're talking about, again, who it didn't work out for, because you dig into the story of our boy Art Schlinger, and there's some definite off the field issues, maybe some, some powder some substances that got involved, some health issues, found unconscious at time. Like, we're not going to blow the man's story up, but, like we're saying, we got to be careful, because like with Bryce Young, it's almost easier to criticize a good dude because he doesn't have the the tough stories. It's just the football stuff. But, drafted by the Colts, and Colts, another team. Make no mistake, we've had our great quarterbacks: Luck, Manning, Johnny Unitas, Anthony Richardson. His name will go down, but we've also had some big misses as well too. Art Schlinger, Jeff George. Oh, I forgot to mention Burt Jones as another great Colts quarterback. Shout out. Jim Harbaugh also had a run. Now we're just talking about Colts legends, but yeah. Also, how many starts for our boy Art? I forgot to mention that. Yeah, 6 starts for Art as well too. And then, I don't know if this is fair or unfair, but he was drafted number 3 overall. Trey Lance, 4 starts. Now, if we were doing a redraft of the league, who gets drafted first? Trey Lance or Bryce Young? I feel like Trey Lance goes first, so I don't know if this argument holds up. And now, that is an interesting concept if we were drafting all of these quarterbacks, because again, when we didn't know about Bryce Young, the size factor was definitely like, the fact that it was a mystery was like, maybe it doesn't matter. We've seen the small quarterbacks work before, but now that he hasn't worked, it's like, would you rather just have Jamarcus Russell and wish? And at least he has it, hopefully you get the cannon arm at some point. Zach Wilson is at least a little bit bigger than Bryce Young, but yeah, I feel like that case definitely doesn't help our case for Bryce Young as not the worst quarterback of all time. But also, we can't forget about Rich Campbell. 1981 draft, out of Cal, drafted by the Packers in the first round. I want to say he was also number 3 overall. Maybe the number 3 is jinxed. Maybe number 1 is like hit or miss. Maybe number 2 is the place to be. But I guess RG3 was number 2. I guess there's no rhyme or reason to it. Okay, Rich Campbell was number 6 overall in the NFL draft. So I don't know if the Packers traded up as well too, and just, sacrifice their future to give up Rich Campbell, but they did take him number 6 overall. So, they did at least were, planning on him being the franchise quarterback. And unfortunately for our man, again, not to blow up his spot, but 0 starts for Rich Campbell, 7 games played, 31 of 68 for his career in passes, 45%, 386 career yards, 9 interceptions, 3 TDs. Yeah, again, 0 starts to the number 6 overall pick versus at least Bryce Young got on the field 18 times. At least they had hope. I was reading the Wikipedia page for Rick Campbell, and it said that the coach in practice just like didn't believe in his arm and just never put him in, which, again, the investment into Bryce Young, that definitely matters in terms of the playing time. So, if we're doing the debate on, if we're really digging into the numbers, then again, the Bryce Young case gets harder and harder. But pause. But yeah, just don't forget about Art. Don't forget about Rich Campbell. Don't forget about Trey Lance or Andre Ware. I'm just saying, Bryce Young is not alone. We're not giving up hope. I'll always fondly remember the Alabama years of Bryce Young. And again, I don't know if it's just the fact that I wanted him to be good in the draft and was not willing to, say that really say the concerns and, be a part of the discourse in that way. But again, I'm just a Bryce Young fan. So make no mistake, like, honesty is the best policy, and Bryce Young not working out. Like honesty, especially with the draft and just with all the takes, but like honesty will be key going forward. And it always has been key, but and it's not like anything that I ever said about Bryce Young, like it wasn't true about the things that, didn't like. It's just like, hey, those things that we don't like about him, it doesn't matter. We like Bryce Young. We're good. We saw him do the comebacks in college, and it was impressive enough for us. But RIP to Bryce Young's NFL career. Uh, could you get him for can you trade supplementary picks? I don't know. I don't know how you get Bryce Young on your team. Unfortunately, they don't have G League teams for the NFL. But if you could make a deal with a Canadian team and say, hey, can we get him on here and get some reps, and then maybe we'll bring him back, and then hopefully we'll have a nice backup for our team. Me and Sam were texting about it afterwards, and we were like, is this the one guy that they actually let go back to college for a couple of years and get some more reps? I don't know if it's just the size thing. If they're like, he's not a factor. But again, shout out to Bryce Young. We're still fans. I don't know if he hears this, if he'll ever want to join the pod. But like we're saying, we'll always believe if Chris Ballard calls us tomorrow and says, do you want to come work for the Colts? I will say yes. And can we get Bryce Young at some point in the future? Bring him in the locker room. Bryce Young, a coach? Are you open to that? Do we have to cut that out too? I don't know. Are we going to make Bryce Young? We want to get Bryce Young. Bryce Young is on our list now for, I guess that we want to get. We want to, the people that we want to change your perception of. We want to get Raygun, and we want to get Raygun and Bryce Young. Bryce Raygun? Is that the new nickname? I don't know. Unfortunate for our guy. But like we said, fond memories. There's a reason that you eulogize somebody, because it's because of the fond memories and the good times. And Bryce Young, there were good times. Make no mistake, the benching, there were rough times, but good times, good memories. And I think in the long run, those will be what will stand out for us about Bryce Young. But also, I wanted to mention for the quarterbacks too, again, looking at some of the quarterback stats, the NFL is just broken this year. And I don't know if I haven't quite pinpointed what it is yet. Make no mistake, we got IT crunching the numbers, working overtime on it. They'll be working through tonight to figure out an answer to this question. But if you look at the leaders in passer rating right now through 2 games, I mean, if you had looked at this list 2 years ago or 3 years ago, you'd have been like, what is happening in the NFL? But the best quarterbacks in the league this year, again, just looking at the numbers, we've got Derek Carr, Baker Mayfield, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, Sam Darnold, CJ Stroud, Geno Smith is just back in the mix as another top quarterback. Jaden Daniels, number 8 in QB rating. Again, I think a lot of that is checking down. His completion percentage, he's 3rd in completion percentage right now, and hasn't turned the ball over as well either, which again, great thing. We're not criticizing that, but also hasn't been necessarily that aggressive. But regardless, the QB rating is there. Purdy at 9, Burrow at 10, Herbert at 11, Minshew at 12. So in the top 12, we've got Derek Carr, Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Geno Smith, and Garner Minshew. Justin Fields at 13 over Aaron Rodgers and Pat Mahomes. So again, it's just like, maybe the take is the passer rating is a fake stat, but you can't really argue with Derek Carr and Baker Mayfield being in the mix for the top quarterback in the league. Pro Football Focus also has Derek Carr number 1 quarterback in the league. And again, just looking at the totality of all the QB stats here, right now, Derek Carr leads the league in touchdowns, so also touchdown percentage, but adjusted yards per attempt, QB rating, like he's the, deep shots, they're scoring every time, and he's completing all of his passes, and he's making quick decisions. Like, they seem to be humming, and that's the part that I seem to miss. Like the Saints, I got to be honest, the Saints were probably the biggest miss of any team I had going into the year. And the Seahawks were another team that I was kind of iffy on as well, too. They're 2-0 to start. They're just winning the division all of a sudden. All these division winners, I guess, I was out on. But I just had Geno Smith question marks. It's like, he had a couple of good years. It's, there are even levels to just being a good quarterback. Can you be a good quarterback for 3 or 4 years? Can you be a good quarterback for 10 years? Like, there's levels to everything. It's like, Did we get the 2 or 3 good Geno Smith years? And he's in his mid-30s. Like, I just wanted to, I wasn't sure what we were gonna get from Geno this year, but again, he's just I guess right back in the mix. As Pro Football PFF had him as the number 3 guy. But the stuff you were reading in the offseason about the Saint chemistry, it just seemed like the vibes were off on that team. It seemed like, nobody was backing Derek Carr as the quarterback on that team. And it seemed like if you read all the reports, like it also seemed like, they had reasons for that because Derek Carr was being outplayed by some of the backups. But again, the offense has looked really sharp and really explosive. And Kamara still hasn't, looks like he hasn't, I guess, hasn't lost a step, whatever. But, he's still able to really create after the catch. Like he had that insane run after the catch with the screen against the Cowboys this past week. Shaheed is, unfortunately, I'm going to pick him up on the waiver wire tonight, and he's not going to have any more good weeks. But, incredible, big plays to start the year. And Olave was like a guy that was being drafted top 15, top 12 as a receiver in fantasy. And I don't think he's necessarily been that to start the year. But again, it's not like they've needed him to carry the offense in a way. Like they've run stuff through Kamara, and Derek Carr has been making good decisions so far this year. I don't think, okay, 1 interception on the year. It's a 2.6%. So right around league average in terms of that. But I'm sure the Saints will cool off a little bit. But again, like if they were a team later in the year that's like they have an aggressive defense and they can hit a big play at any point, that wouldn't be a surprise. Is it going to be a team that wins 13 games? I guess we could pull up the schedule and go through it and see if that's a possibility. And maybe it really is. But again, I think those couple of dynamics are actually a sustainable thing potentially for the rest of the season. So you get all of these names that I had the, potential question marks about could they keep these runs up for the season. But a lot of the guys that we were excited about, like we were talking about, Caleb Williams with Jaden Daniels, with CJ Stroud, and CJ Stroud has been good this year as well too. But Justin Herbert, just a lot of these younger quarterbacks. And I guess Herbert, maybe he's not necessarily in the young quarterback tier anymore, but even still, like he is, how old is Herbert? He's 26. I guess, he's just starting to kind of enter what we would consider his prime years versus, again, all of these guys right now. So the top 5 guys in QB rating, you've got Derek Carr at 33, Baker Mayfield at 29, Josh Allen 28, Murray at 27, and Darnold at 27 years old as well too. So again, maybe that's just big picture for Williams and Daniels and all the other younger quarterbacks in general is not just time for in the season, but again, it's and Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, like for the teams and the situations, obviously it didn't work out originally, and the investment that they made, like, yeah, this Bears thing, if Caleb Williams takes the Sam Darnold route, this Bears thing wouldn't work out. But like we're saying, Sam Darnold might make the Pro Bowl this year, and we might talk about it with Sam on Friday about, what does Sam Darnold look like if he's not on the Jets those last couple of years to start his career. And we're not talking about just like a bad team. We're talking about like, a franchise that is bad, but also in the limelight, and there's extra discourse, and it's just, it's an extra fiery environment to struggle in as a young quarterback. And again, with him compared to Bryce Young, Sam Darnold even had moments in that. Like, that's the thing. I was like, has Bryce Young, what's Bryce Young's best drive in the NFL? But, it's like Sam Darnold will still had the arm strength and still at least had some of the stuff that some of the pieces that was like, if he had a good offensive mind, what could this guy potentially be? And, if anything, it's Kevin O'Connell establishing himself as, again, a really brilliant offensive mind. But Sam Darnold is a guy that can at least make some plays for you. And, he had a couple of passes in this Vikings game where he was hands on the helmet. Like, how did I not see Fred Warner? The pick he threw to Fred Warner was great because the announcer was watching that game and he was like, well, if Fred Warner doesn't pick it off, the safety flying over there definitely would have picked it off. And it was like, oh, is Sam Darnold turning back into the pumpkin? But, they were able to win the game. Shout out Brian Flores. So, crazy start just looking at some of these names from the quarterback position. And, this is not the hierarchy of the quarterback position, just in terms of guys that we would take and guys that we would trust going into a playoff game. Like Mahomes is obviously still number one. Again, the Rams are 0-2, but Stafford is going to still be in the mix for that playoff level quarterback. So, yeah, I'm not saying that Baker Mayfield and Derek Carr have broken their way up into there, but I guess Josh Allen at 3 is pretty much the same. Kyler Murray at 4. Kyler Murray is the one that has a chance to really break up this year. I guess, Derek Carr could definitely revitalize our perception of him as well, too. There was Derek Carr MVP talks at one point in his career. I remember the Derek Carr versus Andrew Luck MVP conversations at one point, but could definitely see Kyler Murray elevating his stock. But again, just the guys in their prime of their career actually having their success. It's just kind of something to keep them in mind for team building with, again, the Sam Darnold-y type guys, like the cheaper guy who was maybe a high pick at one point, who had the traits, who needs a new situation. Again, Mayfield, Derek Carr, these guys kind of all fit the bill for that role. And I guess Derek Carr, not cheap. And did Baker Mayfield get a payday as well, too? Let's pull up the Baker Mayfield contract here real quick. I feel like Baker Mayfield got himself a nice little check from Tampa. Tampa had to pay, obviously, a couple of guys from this past team. Always good to lock down a 9-win team when you have the chance. But, you got Mike Evans has done more for the team than just win nine games this past year. He is on a 3-year, $100 million contract. So, yeah, Baker Mayfield, not the cheapest guy in the league, but there is a potential out after this year as well. So, some flexibility. It's not a long-term deal. And again, when they signed him last year, originally, he fit the bill for what we were talking about. But also, I wanted to mention something with Stroud, but it had to do with Mahomes. So should we just leave it on a tease for the Friday stream? A Stroud Mahomes take this Friday? I don't want to say too much because either it's going to be too spicy or just give away too much. It's going to be like, okay, obviously this is not true, or going to be too revealing. Pause. But there is some Stroud Mahomes quarterback hierarchy stuff that I don't know if it's like, it's not established through week 2, obviously, but it's like, this is going to be a really interesting developing storyline as we continue through the season, and obviously as we head toward the playoffs. But unfortunately, week 2 is going to be probably the Bryce Young week. Sunday night's going to be prime time. So we had the Caleb Williams. I guess the week of the Saints, because it was Saints Panthers last week. So, when it's like, Bryce Young throws a pick in the first game, but going in there and dominating the Cowboys with it, that they did, was maybe also the highlight of the week. Was this the Malik Willis week as well, too? Again, just what is going on in the NFL? The NFL is broken. Not necessarily the highlight of Shane Steichen's career this week, but like we're the most pro Steichen pod on Spotify, on YouTube. So with a Zoom Ultimate Frisbee segment. So we're not gonna say anything bad about Steichen this week. Just have the guys a little more prepared. Maybe Adonai Mitchell. Let's keep the eyes on the ball before we start making plays up the field. I mean, Anthony Richardson wasn't, make no mistake, was not great, but also had some moments. The whole team was definitely not seeming like they were prepared to go into Lambeau and face that team. But we're still in on Steichen this year, still in on Richardson. And like we're saying, that Chicago game is maybe not as terrifying as we thought it would be. Not because of the Caleb Williams thing, but also the offensive line. Like we're saying, the Colts offensive line, it's like, this might be one of the better units in the league, offensive line units in the league. So the Bears defensive line is definitely good, and they're going to get pressure. They're going to get sacks, but Richardson is also going to have plays where he's going to have time, and he's going to have space to create as well, too. So that's going to be a fun matchup. But like we said, stay tuned for the Friday stream. There's going to be some Stroud Mahomes stuff. There's going to be, maybe we'll actually do week 3 picks this time. We got a little sidetracked this last week, but that's bound to happen. New Future album. I don't know what we're all going to get into. We never know. It's going to be crazy. Piercing Truth is going to be stacked as usual. We're going to be live on YouTube. You're not going to want to miss it. So, like I said, go to the YouTube. It's Rem and Sam. It's at Rem and Sam Podcast on YouTube. I think we're just at Rem and Sam on Instagram, but at Rem and Sam Podcast, you can find us there. To TikTok as well, Spotify, Apple Podcast, all the social media platforms. It's Rem and Sam or Rem and Sam Podcast. But I think we did it, people. The Aces in the Storm, the battle for the 4 and the 5 seed in the WNBA. Asia Wilson and Kelsey Plum are playing. So, we're going to be locked in front of the laptop. Only because the TV is down, not for, any other reasons you'd be on the laptop instead of the TV. But we are going to watch the game, have a good time, and get ready for this next stream. So thank you guys for listening. Have a good night and see you all on the next episode.